For Mississauga Lakeshore.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I stand today to offer my support to the government's motion regarding Bill C-7, a bill that provides a new labour relations framework for the RCMP members and reservists. And since its beginning in 1873, when Prime Minister Sir John A. Macdonald introduced in this very House the Act establishing the Northwest Mounted Police, the RCMP has been an integral part of Canada's development. And as my talented and tireless legislative assistant, Adrian Zita Bennett, advises me, we need only read our history books. When it came to bringing law and order to the Northwest Territories, Mr. Speaker, the RCMP was ready and willing with their march west in 1894. During the Klondike Gold Rush, the RCMP rose to the challenge of policing the stampede of people looking to get rich. And when it came to being the first ship to completely circumnavigate North America, the RCMP schooner St. Roch claimed that honour. In World Wars I and II, Mr. Speaker, the RCMP played vital roles. But despite their long and storied contribution to Canada, these members did not have the full freedom of association with respect to collective bargaining. But that has changed, and the Supreme Court has removed the barriers that RCMP members faced in exercising this right. Bill C-7 provides the appropriate framework of labour laws that would govern the RCMP. It ensures that RCMP members and reservists can be represented and bargain collectively like other police services in Canada. C-7 has several key elements which reflect clear preferences expressed by RCMP members during the consultations with members that occurred in the summer of 2015. Specifically, members indicated that they wanted a labour relations framework that provided for a single national bargaining unit, a union that is primarily focused on representing RCMP members, and the recourse to binding arbitration if a collective agreement could not be negotiated. Bill C-7, Mr. Speaker, creates this framework. It would do this by amending both the Public Service Labour Relations Act and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Act to create a new labour relations regime for RCMP members and for reservists. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to offer my support to the government's response to the amendments of the Senate. To begin, the government's motion accepts the removal of all restrictions on what may be included in collective agreements and arbitral awards that are specific to the RCMP. This includes matters such as harassment, transfers and appointments, and appraisals of RCMP members. Harassment in the workplace is an issue that the Government of Canada takes very seriously. Discrimination based on gender or sexual orientation, as well as bullying and harassment, are flatly unacceptable. I believe quite strongly that this one concession in and of itself addresses the chief criticism of this bill. The government's motion also accepts the management rights clause adopted by the Senate and proposes targeting it to focus on protecting the authorities that the RCMP Commissioner needs to ensure effective police operations. This also goes a long way to meeting the concerns raised by the Senate. The government's motion proposes retaining the restrictions that replicate those applying to other areas of the federal public service, such as restrictions preventing pensions from being bargained. And it does not agree with the requirement for a mandatory secret ballot vote as the only option for the certification of a bargaining agent to represent RCMP members and reservists. Mr. Speaker, our government believes that there should be choice between secret ballots and a card check system. The issue of secret ballots was not an issue specifically related to addressing the Supreme Court's decision. Moreover, an organization wanting to represent RCMP members should not be subjected to different certification processes than other organizations under federal labor relations legislation. Bill C-4 reflects the principles of fairness and balance and also gives proper recognition to the role of bargaining agents. Finally, the government proposes not proceeding with expanding the mandate of the Public Service Labour Relations and Employment Board to hear grievances on a wider range of matters, including many that are outside of a collective agreement. This would be inconsistent with the application of the Public Service Labour Relations Act to the rest of the federal public service, and it would create overlap with the appeal and grievance processes established under the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Act. Mr. Speaker, I think that we now have the best possible legislation given all the competing interests that must be accommodated. It is therefore important that we act now to put in place a new labor relations framework to minimize disruption for members, reservists, and RCMP management. Mr. Speaker, there is currently an overlap between the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Act and the Public Service Labour Relations Act, which could result in confusion and conflicting interpretations. In addition, members could be represented by multiple bargaining agents, which would make it difficult for the RCMP to maintain a cohesive national approach to labour relations. And there would be more uncertainty among RCMP members about their collective bargaining rights. Bill C-7 would effectively provide RCMP members and reservists with a process that ensures independence and freedom of choice in labour relations matters. The bill, Mr. Speaker, would also recognize the specific requirements of a national police service and the unique attributes of the RCMP as set out in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Act. And it would balance this with the need for consistency with the broader public service labour relations regime of which it is a part. Mr. Speaker, the government has taken important steps to ensure that workers can organize freely and that unions and employers can bargain collectively and in good faith. Bill C-7 is one part of that, and it honors the right of the RCMP members and reservists to freedom of association with respect to collective bargaining. The time for talk is over, Mr. Speaker. Now is the time to give RCMP members and reservists the respect that they are due. I, for one, am proud to vote for this motion that does just that. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.